Okay, great. It looks like I am live. All right. Welcome, anyone who's here. Good to see you. My name is Dan, obviously, with Mixing with Dan. Um, right. So, the point of this channel is that I'm going to go through and mix a song live. I'm going to take suggestions, um, comments, concerns, queries, questions while I'm mixing. If you want to see any product demos, let me know. You can choose from anything I have, anything I don't have. I'll download the demo and make sure it shows up on the next stream so we can go through it together. Um, yeah, I'm not going to mix the full song today. We're going to go through this in parts, all the way from the beginning, all the way to the end. And you're going to see the whole process, and you're going to see everything that I do. If you want to have your song mixed on the channel at some point, let me know. Send me a message, and I'll let you know how to get it to me, and we'll set up a time and date for it to get mixed. So this song is a song that I mixed for a client almost 2 years ago now, I think. Um, and he gave me permission to use it for this, so thank you for that. This is called Crunch by Dekka and Grace Annabelle. Um, so I've done a little bit of preliminary stuff that I'll go over here. Everything is on its own track. It's all routed to its own subgroup, and then that's all routed to my master section down here. So everything goes through submaster first, then it goes to this audio track where I actually print the mix, and this is the mix that I printed when I originally mixed this song. And then, of course, I have a master fader to make sure I can control that and monitor it properly. So to hear the mix that I'm working on, all I have to do is hit the track input monitor button here, and then I'm listening to the mix that I'm working on. And if I deselect it, then I can hear the mix that I've done before, so I can always go back and compare. You can also do this with any reference track that you want to import into your session. You can just put it on this mix track, and then using the input button, you can flip between them, so you can do that really easily. Okay. Other thing that I've done, you'll notice every track has the SSL channel strip 2 plugin on it. I like this one as just a very basic compression EQ filter plugin. This is actually kind of a clean version of the SSL channel strip. So the EQ points and how they work, and the curves and how those work, and the compression curves and all that, those are modeled after the actual unit. But what isn't done in this one that is done in so many other SSL channel strip plugins is that there's really no saturation that goes along with it. So you got to just pretty much digital EQ with the SSL curves, and I find it works really well, and it also keeps me from over processing. For a long time, I was using the F6 EQ by Waves, and I just found that I was not only like over processing things, over EQing things, but I was also doing it with my eyes, and I would say, oh, there's a peak here, there's a peak there. Let me pull that down, let me push that up, whatever, because I could see it. And it wasn't necessarily that I heard a problem, it was that I saw a problem. And so I've recently gone back to working like this with a channel strip plugin first. A lot of the time, it'll just be a little bit of a high pass filter and maybe a low mid scoop and a teeny tiny touch of compression. I could prevent that compression from happening all the time if I just turn this ratio down, but I kind of like having it as sort of a just a little bit of a leveler, because sometimes a loud track will hit that compressor just by default. And I kind of like that sometimes. So yeah, so I like having this as the first of my chain, just as a little bit of a common control across all of my tracks. It even goes over my effects returns here. You know, it's there as the first insert, so I can, if I need to, I can EQ those tracks before they hit like the reverb or something else. And yeah, then I've just got everything organized. I do drums at the top, bass, guitars, then I do keys and any other instruments. So if there's woodwinds or strings or whatever, or brass, they would come after keyboards. Then vocals, main vocals, and then if there are backing vocals, and then effects, and then the master section. The other thing I do before I start is I pull all the faders down to -12. So across the board here, all the faders are at -12. I know a lot of people say like, ooh, do gain staging. This isn't really about gain staging. This is about helping me achieve a balance in the mix without clipping. Um, I'm just pulling everything down so that when I listen to the song for the first time, I can start saying, "Oh, I'm not hearing enough of this. I'm not hearing enough of that," and that just works better for my brain. I find that I don't look for things to pull down, things that I'm hearing too loud. I find that when I'm listening to something, I'll hear what I'm missing more than something that's there too much. So I do it this way rather than starting at 0 and pulling things down. I start at -12 and I start pushing things up because that works better for how it feels to me, I guess. But then the master section stays at 0 and ideally never changes from 0. Most of these tracks were sent to me as stereo tracks, which you can see here. These vocals through this bass, all of that was sent to me as a stereo track, which isn't really my preference, but you know, you work with what you got. So the bass I've just put straight up the middle. Everything else has been left full stereo. Some of these tracks actually do have stereo information in them, like some of the guitars. And I think just one of the vocal tracks has some stereo information because there are some effects embedded into it. And yeah, so I just leave them like that because stereo tracks, full left, right. Okay. Drum tracks all came in mono, so I have these panned, and essentially all I'm doing is listening to the overheads, right? So I'll solo these two, and then whatever track I'm trying to pan within the drum set, I listen to the overheads and I try to match that spot, right? So these toms, I tried to match where I heard them in the overheads, and that gives you a better, more consistent sound. Yeah, and then the room mics, right? I have a near mono rooms that stayed up the center, and then I have a room center, so that stayed up the center, and then left and right full width, just like the overheads. And then my subgroups here, my drums through my piano. So you'll see there is some panning here. Personally, I like to pull my drums in a bit from full wide because, if you're standing in front of a band and you're listening to a drum set, you don't have one cymbal all the way on one side of the room and the other cymbal on the other side of the room, right? They're not spread across like 20-foot, 30-foot stages. They're at one spot on the stage. And the further back you get from them, the more it sounds like it's coming from just one spot. So personally, I pull my drums in. Guitars, I like to leave a bit wider because you can have more than one guitar player, more than one guitar coming from different spots. That makes sense. And then piano, I like to leave a little bit wider just as an aesthetic thing. I think piano sounds a bit better when it's a bit wider. And vocals, same thing, right? You can have vocalists coming from anywhere, so leave that wide as well. And then also to fill out the rest of the stereo space are my reverb returns and my delay returns, right? And these stay fully wide because that type of sound, that reverb and that delay, that's coming at you from all angles. That's coming from everywhere. Great. So that's the setup. That's where the mix starts. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to listen to it and we're going to start going through it and we're going to start balancing it. Okay, so we're just going to start right from the beginning. Just make sure you guys can hear that because I'm paranoid. Okay, so I want some more main vocal. What's this track sound like? That's more of a background track, so we'll leave that down. seems to be this guitar and these piano tracks that are kind of the main thing. So I'm going to keep this a little bit higher. Drums are sounding really roomy, so I'm going to get a bit more snare top. And I want more of a subby, softer kick, so I'm going to put a bit more of the skin in the hole. Just solo the drums for a second. Didn't want the whole group. Yeah, so that hole is really more of the sound that I'm looking for. Never seem to have enough guitars. No, losing vocals a little bit. I often pin the lead vocal, like the lead vocal, not the doubles, right at unity. Just a useful reference. I can always pull it down later if I need to, but usually the vocal is like such a central aspect of a mix that you don't need to pull it down. Usually you can put it at 0 and just bring everything else up to it. Yeah, so here's the track that has effects embedded into it. Right, it's got that really beautiful reverb. Put it there for now. So if I show you in the edit window here, that track only comes in for this brief period. So it's in this little spot over here, so it's really going to come in just as like a bit of an extra thing, just to like change the timbre of the vocal, and it's going to make a nice little like ear candy moment for people who are listening. Those toms could be a little louder, eh? Probably going to gate these later. Looks like there's a decent amount of bleed in it. That's pretty common for a kit that was tracked live. Use a little more bass too. Alright, so we're through the song for the first time. Now we have a bit of an idea of what the song is about. We kind of know what the vocalist sounds like. We know what the instruments sound like. We sort of know what's dominant, what's sort of more in the background. So this is kind of the point where, still going to be fine-tuning the balance of everything. Everything's sounding like okay for now. But this is like, we're going to keep fine-tuning this balance, because this fader balance and the panning is the like most important thing in any mix. If you get your balance wrong and your panning isn't good, like just the placement of things isn't good and it's not working together, that's going to kill your mix faster than anything else, because that will lead you to do weird things with EQ and compression and other effects to try and make up for a bad balance. I don't know if any of you saw the Dan Worrell video about the 4 basics of mixing, but he absolutely nails it, because your first tool in a mix is the fader, right? That's your first point of balance. You get that right, everything else is going to fall into place. Even panning is kind of a balance tool, because fader is kind of your like front to back, or your front to back balance of a mix, and then your panning is your left and your right balance. So do you have enough on the left? Do you have enough on the right? Is it all working together? Okay. So we're going to keep fine tuning this as we go, but this is a good starting point. So just for a minute, I'm going to solo the drums and I'm going to get this balance a little bit more precise. Let's see what that bottom sounds like. Kind of papery, but I like it. Okay. What if I take all these rooms out? Okay. All right, let's see what the mono room sounds like. Okay, it's good. Little boxy. That's not a bad thing for a room. You can really hear it on the snare. Okay, and now we have the far room center. Probably going to want to take some low end out of that. Let's just do that right now. That's better. All right. Left side. Kind of the same problem. Little flabby in the low end. So there's a reason that I'm pushing these like all the way to the top. It's because I really want to focus on that sound, but I don't really want to lose the context of everything else. And I'm also not worrying that this is 122 hertz and this one was 113 or something like that. It doesn't matter. You'll also notice up that I'm a bottom-up mixer. I'm not a top-down mixer. Anyone who tells you that you have to mix top-down, you don't have to do anything. Do whatever works well for you. And this is the method that I learned, and this is what works well for me. I'm just going to find a chorus. So let's do the second chorus. Is it not grabbing my... Why is it not doing the thing? Insertion follows playback. No, I hate that. I don't know. Maybe it's a new version of Pro Tools. It used to be that if you selected a marker, held shift, and selected the next marker with the key command, it would select that whole region. Doesn't seem to be doing that for me today, so I'm just going to do it with the mouse, old school style. All right. Still not quite the kick sound I want. So sometimes what I do is I will create a mono aux input. And I'm going to give this a bus. I'm definitely using bus 1 for stuff. Let's do bus like 20. Don't think I'm using bus 20 for anything. 15, yeah, these go up to 15, 16. So yeah, I'm not using bus 20. And then drums are going to 119, 120. go. And then these are going to go to bus 20. Right, so now this becomes my control for my kick. I'm just going to copy that over because I haven't done anything with it yet. Remember, we're looking for like kind of a pillowy kick, so I really don't think I want that like super there it is. My headphones jacked up all the way. Yeah, no wonder it's not getting louder. Still want some definition. We're not going to do a shelf that high. We're going to pull it down. And I'm not paying too much attention to where these knobs end up. Like this one is at 5.89. This 72 hertz, I'm giving 72 hertz dB. Tighten that up a little bit. Still sounds a little weird in the mid. Yeah, right in there. Yeah. All right, that's starting to sound good. All right, what does that sound like for the rest of the drums? Okay. Yeah, so now I'm losing that a bit. I think I need to give it a little bit more top end for the definition. Overall, I like where that's sitting. Okay, so that's not my problem because that's not fixing it. Let's try, maybe it's the dynamics. So for kick, a lot of things can work for kick, but one of my favorites is a Fairchild. And what I like to do is pull the threshold way down and push the input gain up. So when I hear it, I like it, but it's not cutting through quite the way I actually want it to. All right, it's working well in the drum mix. So sometimes if you sometimes when you add bus compression, it really brings the kick out. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it just a little bit more. There we go. Remember when I said that a good fader balance will prevent you from doing crazy things with other processing? This was a great example of that. I was trying to bring out definition in my kick with EQ, but all I had to do was come and move a fader up a little bit. Right? We have 3 different kick mics here. We have the kick in, kick hole, and kick skin. So I wasn't in the recording session for this, but a kick in mic is generally, like a large diaphragm condenser mic, large diaphragm dynamic mic that is put into the kick hole. And usually you get the most like beater sound out of that. So that's usually your definition in a kick drum. And then the kick hole and kick skin, these can vary a lot more. You see a lot of large diaphragm condensers. Like one of the classics is U47 FET, Neumann U47 FET is a classic for these kinds of positions. And then kick skin, I feel like that's usually actually like a Yamaha sub kick kind of thing. But in this case, I would imagine it's some other kind of condenser, or maybe that's the condenser and this is another dynamic mic. It's hard to say. I wasn't in the session, but overall you get the most definition from the kick in. And so instead of trying to, boost the high end on my kick sub here and compressing the ever loving, shit out of it, I could have just pushed the kick in mic up. So, all right, let's have a look at our snare. Probably don't need so much of that now. So snare sound is tough because snare sound isn't just your top and bottom mics. It's also your overheads and your rooms. Probably like more than the kick drum, the snare really, really comes through in the rooms. Like if I mute the snare close mics, you'll probably still get a decent amount of snare without them in the drum mix. Right, so muting these 2 tracks, I have almost as much snare as I did before. Right? It sounds a little bit closer to me now that these are unmuted, but there's so much snare in the rooms and the overheads. Let's see where the most snare is. That you can't just mix your snare tracks. You got to mix in context of the mix. So let's mute these. Still getting a pretty decent amount of snare here. Right? And so now I'm not even hearing it in the overheads. I'm hearing it through the toms and the hats. This is the bleed that I was talking about. So for now, I'm going to mute those tracks, and they're going to stay muted. And let's look at the overheads. Okay, so in here, the snare is very poppy. Almost sounds like a different snare, right? Now we're starting to get some of the fundamental back from the snare. I think it's these 2 that I'm going to want to take out. A little bit of that low mid. Just going to make sure it's not really the toms. Yeah. Okay, so actually those can stay in me. Yeah, in these I'm going to take out. I'm going to see if I can find where that's happening. so that's 0.58. Leave the Q alone. Alright, so we're going to get close to 0.58, and we're going to pull that out of there as well. Already I like that better. Okay, on the actual snare track, not a ton of fundamental in this. This is a very mid-rangey, almost popcorn snare kind of sound. I'm actually going to look for something around there. Maybe this is the wrong band to be doing it with. I'm just looking for a little more fundamental. Kind of like that. There we go. That's getting better. Let's see what the SSL compression sounds like. No, I almost always hate the fast attack. Let's add in the bottom. Let's just listen to the bottom for a second. And my focus or my strategy for these is usually to compress them way harder. This will help bring out those little ghost notes that we're hearing that we didn't really hear in the top mic. There we go. That's a good snare sound now. It's actually hitting a little too hard for my taste now, so I think I'm just gonna... Alright. Overheads. Let's just put that in center for a minute. Not as much low-end information in this as I would like. Usually I end up taking a little bit out of the low mids, but I don't think I'm going to do that on this one. And often what I do is I just copy those settings over to the other side. Yeah, it's working. I'm going to have to dial back the compression on these a little bit. Just hitting me a little too hard. Alright, those toms. Alright, let's look at the toms. So, let's find a spot where we have some fills. Here we go. This is a decent little spot right here. And what we're going to do is we are going to start gating these so that we can process them a little bit better. Definitely something to mention about the SSL channel strips. You can switch the order of processing. So for this, I'm actually going to have my dynamics come before my EQ because I don't want any EQ boosts I make to affect how the gate is triggering. Great. All right, let's just make sure. All right, gate thresholds. Right, so what we want is we want just the tom to release the gate. That's pretty good. It is coming a little bit early. There's still one snare hit that's sort of triggering it a bit early, but that's actually not the worst. It's not fully opening when that happens. And that's actually going to help us preserve a bit of the transient attack, so the gate's not going to... gates should always be fast attack, in my opinion. I've never used a slow attack on a gate for anything. That release is a little bit fast, though. There we go, that's better. Alright, 80 is probably a bit high, but let's look for that fundamental. When I said 80, I meant 800. We're just going to gently filter. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to look at some compression here. It's probably a bit much. All right. Okay, that one sounded good. Let's have a look at this one. And yeah, I know I'm skipping a track, but that one, I don't know if you caught it earlier. This, oh, am I looking at the right one? No, I wanted to look at Rack Tom 2. Oh, so I already did Rack Tom 2. I need to do Rack Tom 1. Oh, no Rack Tom 1. All right, so we're good to move on to Floor Tom. All right, so same as before. Fast attack. I like to keep the range on my gates at around -12. I don't like having a gate that like has too far to go. And it can also start to sound really unnatural. way too much snare in this. That's because I'm still looking at the Rack Tom 1 strip. There you go, folks. Everybody does it. Everybody tweaks an EQ and goes, why isn't this working? And then you realize you're on the wrong channel. Yes, there we go. Snare is opening that up again. Very nice. There we go. Let's try. Sorry if this is boring for anyone, but this is what mixing looks like. If you're wondering how people mix drums, this is part of it. It's not glamorous. Good. These filters are really just to help keep these other low-end elements out of the realm of the kick drum. The kick drum sort of sits between like 40 and 60 hertz most of the time, and I want that to be the lowest foundation of my mix. So I'm using these high-pass filters to keep everything else out of there. If you have an over-cluttered low end, you're going to run into troubles with it. Let's see. Yeah, like that. There we go. Getting a little too much of that boxiness in the snare, and I think that's actually coming from my room mic, so I'm going to pull those down a little bit again. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's find that spot where the snare is triggering it. There we go. We can leave that there for now. And let's find a spot where that tom gets hit. Oh, it doesn't. So this tom, we're just gonna pull that right out. In fact, just hide it, make it inactive. There's no reason to have it. So that threshold doesn't set very well. Yeah, great. this compression is bothering me. It's just... Sure, yeah, that's the default. Okay. Just resetting these compressors back to default because they're bugging me. Shouldn't be bugged by the compression on the snare this early in the game. Great starting point for an 1176. Slowest attack, fastest release, and yes, the controls are backwards on an 1176. What I want to see if I can do... It's not sounding good. I was gonna see if I could get some some saturation, some distortion out of this. And I like to use the same compressor top and bottom. You can see that we need to adjust the settings. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that drum sound for now. We'll come back to it if we need to. Just listening to the bounce of the hi-hats and the cymbals and stuff. I'm okay with it for now. Mixing process is circular in certain ways. They say a mix is never done, it's only abandoned. It's because, you set up your drums to sound good, and then you go, okay, great, my drums sound good. I can move on. But then once you've got your bass and your guitars going, oh, well, now maybe that fundamental on the tom is interfering with the resonance of the bass, something like that. And then you have to go back and forth over and over again. And that's just kind of how it works. This isn't a drum mixing tutorial. It's not a bass mixing tutorial. We're talking about how to mix an entire song together, right? So I don't know if you've really put it together or even noticed, but whenever I'd go into solo on something, I then listen to it in context of, I have been listening to it in context of the drum mix, and then I listen to the whole song again, right? And if something is bothering me when the whole song is playing, I don't care how much I liked it in solo. I'm going to go back and change it. That's how this works. Yeah, so let's look at some bass here. Stereo track, not my favorite bass, like we said. Right, just like the other stuff, we're going to keep it out of the way of the kick. Gentle shelf. And then generally like right around there. Alright, let's have a look at one of my favorite compressors. This is a plugin by Softtube. It came with the TLA Grand Channel, I think it's called. This is the compression side of it. The channel is a compression NEQ, and you can use either of those as their own plugin as well. So this is an optical-based compressor, tube leveling amplifier, very similar to an LA2A, but with a bit more control. And so if I was doing like a harder rock song with a more aggressive bass, I think I'd be okay with using an LA2A, but I want a little bit more control on this one, so I'm going to go with this. We also get this great little like saturation and parallel inject features. And we have a low cut that I believe is pre the detector circuit for this compressor. We're getting close to time, so we're going to have to... Just gonna skip ahead in the song a little bit. And I want to listen to the bridge because there are some little like bass fills in here that I would like to bring out. And if I can achieve that just with compression and proper leveling, then that would be great. And then that'll lessen the amount of automation I need to do later. So let's hear it coming out of the previous verse. Gorgeous. Actually a little bit loud now. That's a bit better. Ooh, that was an interesting. Bow. So I'm just going to put a little marker there. Call this bass note. And we'll come back to that and we'll see if we can find that note somewhere else and replace it. Because that's not great. Wow. Yeah, there's another one in there too, eh? Yeah, right there. So right about there. I just like to put markers in, keep track of these things, because you know, editing is essential to mixing, but I like to keep the processes separate. When I'm mixing, I like to be mixing. When I'm editing, I'll be editing. But yeah, so later on, we'll come back, we'll see if we can find those two notes, and we'll see if we can replace them. But otherwise, I'm liking the bass level, I'm liking the bass sound in general. I'll hear the intro here. Still a little loud for me, actually. Yeah, this is sitting better for me now. Just gonna see what happens when it hits one of those notes. What's up, Josh? Love the comment. All right. Yeah, we're coming up to time on the hour here. We're making good progress. Next time, we'll see if we can fix those two bass notes, and we'll move on to the vocals and then the guitars. Just part of my process, I like to get my foundation, and then my vocals, my rhythmic foundation, and then my vocals going, and then I fit everything else into the space that's left over. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for you, Josh, and your comment. Love it. And I'll see you guys in 2 weeks at the same time. Good night, everybody.